There we
It's
go.
all good. Section 5 and section 6. Okay, I feel like I'm that instructor that's behind. In what the hell did we write?
Yeah, let us pull up those sections in the course blueprint so we can refer to it specifically.
Yeah. Is that what we're discussing today?
Where did it go? Hold on, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull this up.
Well, let me see if I'm going to answer this correctly. So in regards to section 5 and section 6, and if we're referring to the blueprint, each of the questions are kind of laid out in regards to what we're asking for. If there needs to be more detail, other than those questions inside of the distinctive areas that we're looking for criteria, I don't know what else I could do to kind of expand on that. Maybe there are no questions. There are no questions.
Yeah, it's blank.
It's blank?
Yep.
Okay, so you guys don't see the questions that we see, I guess.
It just says self-directed learning and student motivation, and then the grid, the table is blank.
Okay, yeah, that obviously would be problematic. Yeah.
That's weird because I see the questions on mine. I made a copy right away of the blueprint, so I could just work on it. And I see the questions.
Yeah,
so
I do too.
Maybe somebody deleted it.
I'm going to share the link.
Yeah, if you can share the link, just to clarify. So section 5, self-directed learning and student motivation, and section 6, ensuring equity in an online classroom. That's what we're talking about, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and I have it all in mine as well.
Okay, that could be the reason why. Jim and triple MF, does that work out well? Ellen also? Look at the link on the group chat and see if that works. Worst comes to worst, I'll also post it on the stream that we have going on the Google Classroom.
Yeah, and if for some reason it's the Google Doc is just not functioning correctly, I suppose we could just download it as a Word document and send it out.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, people say they can see it in the new link.
All right, and I've also posted it on the wall of the Google Classroom as well, so in case you don't save it.
Yeah, thanks for alerting us to that. I don't know why that issue is there.
A difference I see is that, that very last box in section 6, creating equitable classrooms. On my copy, there are some hyperlinks that aren't on your copy.
There may have been multiple versions, and that may be the reason why we're having this little bit of a discrepancy.
Corin, how many hyperlinks do you have?
Oops, hang on, wrong screen. I have 3. Do you want me to just post them in the chat?
I have 3 in mine also. This is this is so strange.
Oh.
I'll dump them in the chat real quick.
Okay.
How odd. I'm not really sure what the reason is for this, but thanks for your patience as we try to figure it out.
And see, actually, John and I are modeling what it looks like to work online, and having really competent students really works in our advantage. So thank you so much for being on top of it. Yes.
Good question. Thanks for alerting us to it. Other questions that you might have just in terms of housekeeping or the module work, the assignments up to this point?
And again, as just a reminder while we're in the session as well, Katrina is also here to help us out in any way, shape, or form when it comes to technical difficulties as well. So just as a reminder to also Megan and Sally, Katrina is also here to assist us when it comes to some of these questions that we may have had that we were trying to address.
Yeah. Okay, well, it looks like we're ready to really dive in. I think the topics for today's discussion should be fun, so I'm excited about that. We're going to start off with looking at how you can cultivate community and enhancing student engagement in an online environment with Daniel. So Daniel, take it away.
Sounds good. So this is obviously an area that I've spent a lot of time on. I've always felt like I'm someone who has been a student affairs kind of person, working in the academic affairs arena and utilizing student development theory to the best of my ability, and incorporating that into our classrooms. And so some of the tools that I really refer to and I'm always cognizant of is just making sure that we have a universal classroom design from the get-go. And so that really means, and as you can see on some of the questions that we've had on our page with the Google Classroom, has been how are we identifying or how are we recognizing our students? And are we prepared for all the different types of barriers or identity markers that we may have that some faculty member may not conceptualize when we're trying to figure out how do we best engage with the students who are in the room with us. And I think that sometimes is like the chicken and the egg scenario. You know, we write our syllabi so much earlier before we actually then meet our actual students. And so how are we meeting their learning needs to the best of our ability? I have a variety of different resources that I'll be sharing with you all. And some things are from webinars that I've been engaging with recently with the National Society of Experiential Educators. And I think they've been able to really give some great webinars and some good examples of online education. And actually, if you all are open to this, I don't want to take up too much of our time because I really do want to make sure that we have the opportunity to break out into conversation. Can I ask the host, John, can you give me the ability to screen share real quick?
I am happy to. I just need to figure out how.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's see.
And if we can't get to it, it's okay. But I think one of the key things, and we've tried to model it to the best of our ability.
Okay, I think you should be able to now.
Great, okay. Look at that, that's awesome. Okay, so now bear with me. I'm sorry, I'm that person who has way too many things open. And so we're gonna minimize that. We're gonna open this. Sphere Center, no. Oh, come on. I just had it open and I purposely set it up. No. All right, I apologize. I don't want to waste our time for you all looking for me trying to find the slides and the resources. Here we go. All right, so this is what I'm gonna essentially give us all access to, and these were different workshops that were shared with me during some of the sessions that I had participated in. I wanted to, you know, I'm a big believer that we need to give out as many resources as possible. But in one of the sessions that that stood out to me was in regards to when engaging with our students and our colleagues through this virtual service learning kind of experience. It's very much the same way, and I'm just gonna scroll down to the one area that I wanted to highlight. It's the way that we engage with our students to build community. I think that's really ideal. And so simple little things like being able to engage with our students through online discussion boards or creating a sense of community by connecting with their social media accounts or creating your own social media account for the classroom has been ideal. And so I think this is the key thing that I wanted to showcase and show you all. It's really being conscious of all the different types of tools that we have online that we would traditionally do in a face-to-face classroom, but then we would have a lot more opportunity to walk step by step with our students and assist them. Here, when we're doing this remotely, we have to make sure that we are patient, just like how we showed earlier, an example of when patience is well needed. I think it's continuing to remind ourselves of that during this current global world that we're in. And so I say these things just as a reminder to make sure that you're utilizing the tools that you have at your fingertips. And these are just a list of some tools that I think are important in regards to creating this sense of community, not just on our LMSs, our learning management system. So not just on Blackboard, not just on Moodle or on Google Classroom, but really making sure you're taking advantage of some of the tools that some of our students might already be able to utilize without even thinking about how I would utilize this for a classroom setting, but making sure that you are maybe taking a little bit extra advantage of different communication tools. And I think I'm going to stop sharing there. I'll share all of these slides with you outside of our session so that you have the opportunity to kind of go through and kind of see what you'll take and what it will be of your benefit. But I really think some of these key things have been how engaging with students through intergroup dialogue work has really helped me best be able to identify our students in our classroom settings. And so building that community and really making sure that we have our learning outcomes clear from the get-go, but then creating community standards amongst everyone in the room or amongst everyone online really works in our favor. Is there a question?
I have a question. Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you do when in one class you have a variety of strengths of internet and access to the internet? So you may have people who have great Zoom connections. You may have others sharing the internet. You may have someone who can't, for any reason, come on with a camera, but they can connect with their phone. And I'm really looking for strategies to create community when you have this variety of access. Some could turn the camera on and will originally, and then turn it off again because of the internet unreliability, etc. But you kind of get my drift. And so what I'm looking for is how do you balance that in an engaging way?
Can I comment on that real quick?
Please do, because
yeah, and actually you raise a really important point. For a variety of reasons, I think we should be very careful about requiring students to have their camera on. And so, I mean, let me step back for a minute. On Wednesday last week, we talked about risk management. And I made the comment that in an online world, some of the traditional risk management issues aren't that big of a deal. You're not physically in a location, so some of the in-person, environmental, physical types of risks aren't going to really be there. But there are other types of risks that emerge in an online virtual environment, and students, there could be other people in the room with the students where they shouldn't be recorded or videotaped. Sometimes students simply aren't comfortable, showing the rest of the class where they live or how they live and the circumstances they're in, those sorts of things. So, it might be one thing to say, I need a visual check-in right at the beginning of class so I can see that you're there. But other than that, I don't think we really should require students to have their cameras on, which would allow them to call in with their phone, or just have their camera turned off and just have the audio, which helps with the connection issues like you were talking about. So that's my thinking. Daniel, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm going to minimize them to the best of my ability. One, I'll say a friend of mine at an institution that I know currently utilizes Zoom, and the provost makes it mandatory for folks to have their cameras on. So that is a prime example of what we don't want to do with our students, right? I think John is hitting this on point, right? So especially when it comes to access, we all, if you haven't heard, it's better on our bandwidth for us to not have our cameras on, right? And so it'll make it easier to have slides up or access to a variety of things. I think when it comes to the difference in regards to utilizing our mobile devices, which many of our students might be utilizing in comparison to maybe a laptop, I think really being cognizant of accessibility as much as possible. I think you're asking me some questions that I might need to really do a little bit more deeper dive of research, and I want to be able to post something. So after class, I might be posting a few things, specifically identifying them, because I think that's a great question of concern. And I've been seeing it. I'm on a Facebook group that many of you, I would highly recommend. It's called Pandemic Pedagogy. And it's been a lot of fun. And it's interesting to see the types of conversations and articles that are being posted that really are addressing some of these issues of concern when it comes to, our students who don't have the ability to be as accessible or are being really conscious of our environments.
Thank you both. I'm looking for ways to, I accept that as a classroom. That's the online experience that I've had, and I assume it's going to be it going forward, that there are going to be these various ways that people could dial into a synchronous conversation. And what I'm trying to do is create a sense of community among everyone who's doing that. So whether you have your camera on or off, one way I addressed it was to go around the virtual room and ask everyone in a discussion just to chime in, so that they at least have a voice, and invited people to go one-on-one later if there was an issue. And it's not just accessibility, it's also mental health issues involved in this as well, which isn't often addressed straight up. But sometimes I think the check-in is fine. Some people won't have the ability to check in, but I'll know they're there. And it's just having that level of engagement that at least everyone feels they're in the same room together, whether they can see each other or not, that I'm after. So they all feel like they have the same class. That makes sense.
Oh, no, it does make sense. Yeah, no, for sure. Jim, you were going to say?
I was just going to say thank you for that. I really appreciate that idea, because I noticed in just a social 101 class, creating community is one of the first things I try to do, even for the intro class, and it failed halfway through the year. There were two very distinct groups: the group that had video, and the group that did not, really had no community and were relying on me more one-on-one. I don't know. I think there was a connection issue when I could look at students too. I could more readily engage in them. So I really struggled with that a lot.
And I only say this as a part of our conversation. I think it's teaching online and then teaching online during a global pandemic are two different scenarios. And I think we need to be really conscious of that. And so we are trying to keep ourselves healthy. And I think that's been something if you haven't noticed, I've been trying my hardest to practice that as much as possible with us, because I think that's a conversation that we need to be collectively having with our students. And I think addressing those needs are really important to the best of our ability. And I think that's why it's important that we don't spend too much time in the main space like this. And we do a lot of opportunities when we can do our breakout sessions to be able to engage in different ways. I think that also helps build a community, because sometimes there are still the introverts and extroverts in the room. And some folks might not feel comfortable sharing in a space of 40, 50, but they might feel more comfortable doing something collectively in a group of 4, or doing discussion board online conversations, as well as doing direct messages or posts on other platforms.
And just to, one more follow up with this, I guess I'm cognizant of students who express themselves really well verbally, but perhaps are less adept at writing, and the opposite. So what I've been trying to do is find ways to give them equal time online, so that everyone has an opportunity to express themselves in the way that plays to their strength, while improving the other areas. And that's kind of my feeling behind some of this too. And you don't need a camera, but it's still a mixed, if you want to call it a mixed media classroom. So anyway,
no,
I will stop now.
No, thank you so much for sharing. I think it's really appreciative. I think you are hitting the nail on the head when it comes to timing, because I am the white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland as much as possible, and recognizing we've just hit our 15-minute mark in regards to this conversation for me, so that we purposely will then have the opportunity to give you all the opportunity to continue this conversation, but brainstorm collectively in breakout groups. What are ways that you would engage your students? And I think our prompt that we ended up having is, what's the makeup of your students? How are you able to identify what kind of learners they are, and what are the demographics of your population in the course? And this really will lead to a lot of our conversation that we'll have towards the end of the class. But I think it's this conversation and piece that really is important for us to be cognizant of when we think of equity. And that'll be something that we'll go in more depth. So, John, do you have the ability to do the breakout rooms? You do, right? Great. So I'll put do you want to do the prompt as well, or did you have anything else to share?
Maybe I had some thoughts, but I think it'd be better just to get people into the breakout rooms to have discussion. And then maybe once we come back, I'll see if it would still be helpful for me to share at that point.
I love it. That's great.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to put you into breakout rooms here. And Daniel, how much time do you want to give them?
Let's do 10 minutes respectfully, and then we'll come back. Because you know what? I like that we are a smaller group today. And so I think we might be able to go in a little bit more depth with our going back and forth.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to put you in groups. You'll have 10 minutes. So we'll come back about 42 after. And I'll send the prompt here in just a moment.
Great. All right, good job.
And thanks, Daniel, so much, you want me to just pop in the that first question, correct?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Did it pop up for you? Okay. Excellent. Oh, Daniel, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My new set of headphones, there's a button as well as the button that's on the controller, so trying to get that. I would say just add the last question again, because I think that got cut off.
Oh, yeah, they have that.
The character limit.
Yeah, so dumb. I don't know why they do that.
But I don't know if both you and Katrina notice, we have half of the amount of people on today. So, hey, that's up to them. I think that's respectful. If this is recording and we're still having this conversation, I think it's important to analyze and be conscious that half of the people leave after the first session, after the first week. Which is fine, and there could be a variety of reasons. Katrina, did you hear anything, or
No, I was wondering, did anybody say I'm going to be away on vacation, or is that expected that people kind of let us know? Can you tell if people dropped, or are they just taking a class off?
Would we be able to see if people dropped? I mean,
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think we really have any information why people aren't on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I'm just, I'm just naming it because I see it, and I don't know if you both are also cognizant of it as well.
So there's no, it was like, what was it like after the first day? Was it like 37? What was the total that we discovered like after that initial drop off? Was it like high 30s?
Yeah, it was like 36, 37. Yeah.
Okay, and now it's down to 21 or 19 or something.
At least those that are present on the Zoom session, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what should.
It's something I don't think we could do anything about it now, but I think it's something that we just address and note it.
Okay, sure. So
John, if you want to afterwards, just I'll do a popcorn, one or two people's examples, and then if they don't share what you were thinking of, I'd recommend sharing it, and then we can transition into your section.
Okay, awesome.
Great. And
can I just ask a couple of quick questions?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I joined late. I wanted to know, were there questions about broken links or other issues that I can jot down?
It was something simple. It was somebody had a question regarding section 5 and 6 on the blueprint, and they didn't have the prompt questions, nor did some of them have the links. So we reshared that, and then John then ended up resharing the links because I guess the one I sent didn't have the links.
Okay.
And then I think there was just a question about support afterwards.
Yeah.
As well as requirements for folks. John had reiterated what was asked of us to make sure that folks from the New England Campus Compact submit their blueprints sooner rather than later.
Okay. Yep. I'm still trying to get on as a teacher. I don't know what's going on.
No, Megan was able to not.
We haven't connected yet. I told her when I go there, I don't see. So in any case, once I can do that, I can start to help with feedback and things. But right now I feel kind of helpless, like not being able to get in and see how people are doing. And
yeah.
But anyway, that's not your concern. I'm just letting you know that for the other groups, I'll follow up.
Yeah. I feel like there's still been, a good amount of feedback on the stream. And I'm still getting multiple people submitting things. And then there's also apologies that they're still apologizing that they're submitting things late. And so I've responded privately and I've said, there's no need for you to be apologizing. You are all good. Yeah.
Once I talk to Megan, I'll ask her about the sending out reminders. I feel like there's still a lot of reminders coming out, and that might create anxiety for people. I don't know if that's automatic or that's what's happening there.
And I guess that's a Megan question or.
Yep. Okay. I'll ask her.
Well, I was just going to say, John, do you know if you said you have shut off your notifications. Was that on the classroom section?
Yeah, it was in the classroom notification settings.
I see it. Hide notifications. Okay. Show condensed notifications. Okay, great. Thank you.
While you were talking about, the equity issues in the classroom, I created like a brief survey to send out to all my students before we come back.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask them, like I had a list of statements if they apply to their lives, like I have unpredictable work hours, I'm taking care of people, I don't have reliable internet access, I don't have a good place to study. I don't know, is this in line with what you were talking about?
Those are going to be things that I'll talk about deeper, but I think what John was addressing with the one question that came up, I mean, honestly, I need to do even more research on that just to be able to find more resources, because I think that's a constant question that comes up, which is my student doesn't have the internet but has their phone, and so how does everything become mobile? I don't know. John, have you dealt with it more?
No, I haven't dealt with it a lot. Yeah, most students haven't had an issue having their camera on, and they haven't had an issue with bandwidth issues. I've had a few students who, like, they ended up leaving work to go out and sit in their car. And so then they were just on their phone, and at least where I'm at, that seems to be the more common type of issue.
Yeah.
But I know others, express, like, you may not live in a circumstance that you want other people to see, or you have other people running around the house because you're not in a house by yourself or in an apartment by yourself. You may have to do it outside. I've had to do some meetings outside, just so I could have some privacy and some quiet. But then there are kind of random people walking by, so yeah, I think we just need to be flexible.
Yeah, I think that flexibility and I think I hit it before we broke out, which is online teaching and an online teaching during the pandemic are two different things, right? And I think that our patients need to be even more inundated. And it's so funny. There was an article, I feel like in the New York Times, there was an opinion piece specifically about classrooms in parking lots and having access, right? Like, because I know like our libraries, before they had reopened in our area, you were still able to get internet access from the parking lot. And that was a recommendation that the libraries were offering to our local communities. So interesting to kind of be cognizant of that. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and give the 1 minute.
Sure. Sounds good. I'm going to run ever so quickly. I'll be right back.
Okay. People just start popping in a little bit. Welcome back, everybody.
All right.
I think we're almost all back.
I think so.
Okay, go ahead, Daniel.
I was just going to say, were there, could we get maybe 1 or 2 volunteers to maybe just share what they were able to discuss within their groups? Don't be shy. Oh, God. Come on, friends. Something must have come
Selena, I nominate you.
Okay. Peer pressure from within the group.
Okay, so I've been nominated. I think giving students, so there was talk of across of wanting to recognize the importance of developing those norms, right? So whether they're face-to-face or online or both, if we start in a face-to-face and then move to an online situation. So that setting the stage is really important for then having that further community. And then to give students leadership roles in order to emphasize, like facilitation roles, leading book chapters, things of that sort, to emphasize that we're not the sage on the stage, and not just to talk through us, but to talk with each other, and different ways of having that be an elaboration on what each other is saying, as opposed to a negation of what others are saying. Does anybody in the group want to add to what I've said?
I thought you summed it up really well, Selena. I don't know. Does Ellen or anyone else? Was it Karen?
And Nicole was also in the group.
Nicole, yeah. Nicole, did you want to? All of you had some great ideas.
Yeah, I think you did a good job summarizing it. The only thing I think is that you had some good strategies about like having people know what order they're going to talk in and being prepared ahead of time and calling on each other. So the active participating, the scaffolding, some examples of that.
Yeah, and Selena, I would maybe just talk about that yes and piece you mentioned, because I thought that was really good.
Okay. So I had the privilege of being able to take an improv class, so an improvisation class. And so yes, and is one of, I believe is the guiding principle for improvisation, where you are supposed to accept whatever offer is given to you. So if somebody says something to you, regardless of, so that ties into the not negating, that ties to the elaborating. So it's somehow acknowledging, accepting what that person has said, and it could be by paraphrasing or summarizing it or saying I agree or appreciate, and then adding your own additional perspective onto that. So ideally it encourages students to talk because they know that whatever they're going to offer is going to be received.
I appreciate that, and I think that's great. I think you touched on a piece that I think is really important in regards to building that common ground, right? It's making sure that there are set standard conversational pieces for folks to be able to engage in those kind of conversations. I love it. Anyone else from another group?
Go, because this yes and goes off of what Selena said. We talked about how do we form these groups? How do we get these students engaged from the get-go? And anything from, you know, the expectations of the course with our syllabi and letting them know what our role is and what their role is throughout the entire semester of being engaged. We also talked about different ways that we do, like, for example, I use what I call a bio poem. So I talk about me in this poem, you know, what my interests are, where I come from, and I have a lot of freshmen, so I usually put in there, you know, where are you living on campus, where do you come from, what are your extracurricular activities, and then I group those students, and it just gets them to start getting engaged and start building a team. And then I also use for this service learning this year, what do you see outside your window? So what's outside your window? And because we're confined and it will be online, so show me a picture of what you see outside your window, and then let's bring it one step further. Okay, what do you see in your community as a need? Or where do you see your role in the community? Or how do you see you making a difference in the community? Can you see yourself engaged in that over time? So it just starts the ball rolling and getting them excited about what they're going to be doing. But again, having that buy-in of having them look and see for themselves what's in their community, since we have to kind of adjust and reinvent this. So then to build those teams, I say anybody else like that need or are interested or see the same need in your community. So the whole premise is what's outside your window. Show me a picture, what's outside your window.
I love that. That is such a cool way to get the conversation started. Thank you for that, Gail.
You're welcome.
I'm going to write that into my syllabus now for my fall class. That's great. I love it. Because then I listening to you say that, I can easily make a connection to having the students explore Johari windows, right? And then have their own self-assessment piece of that. That's going to be great. I love it. That's ideal.
So then at the end, I'm going to put, what do you see in your rearview mirror? So this way they keep going forward. It's all about the momentum and moving forward. And I feel like if they visually feel that or see that it will progress them to keep going and not just for the class, but become citizens, as we talked about at the beginning.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you everyone who shared, and I appreciate the time that you've given to this. John, I'll transition to you and see if there's any final pieces on this that you'd like to share, and then be able to move on to our next section.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to everyone for those really great ideas. I thought I would just share a couple other quick thoughts in terms of online community and interaction and engagement, and then we'll transition over to discuss developing competencies and the importance of that through service learning. Many of the things, that we can do is already, they've already been mentioned. I would just encourage you to be creative in terms of creating online community, and recognize that sometimes we can really mix up the synchronous and the asynchronous online community opportunities. So, I mean, you can have live sessions like this where people, meet, and they can do breakout rooms and have discussions in smaller groups. It's already been mentioned, some people are just more willing to share in a smaller group. But the same thing applies in an online discussion forum. I found that if I have a class of 30 students, that's a relatively small class, but that's still a lot of people to be in a discussion forum. And so in the learning management system, I just generate randomized discussion groups each week. So in the online course, instead of there being one big scroll of death discussion thread, they have discussion prompts, and they're divided into smaller groups of 5 people, and they know, they have the clear expectations. They understand how they're supposed to engage with each other and how many people they should be responding to and everything. And their comments and posts don't get lost in the thread, and they just have more ownership over what they're sharing. They have more opportunity to share their unique thoughts. And I found that to be way more effective than just having these giant discussion forums. So, I think whether it's synchronous, asynchronous, whether you're using an LMS system, Google Classroom, using social media. I know some faculty use things like Facebook groups or whatever. There's so many different technologies and ways to do it. But we just want to make sure that we're recognizing that students have different personality types. They're, some are more inclined to jump in and share thoughts. Others are pretty reticent and really uncomfortable to share thoughts, particularly in a larger group. So we want to consider that. In terms of service learning in an online course and creating that online community, one of the things I do that fits for my course, I teach in business. I teach organizational development and change management. And so this course, it's teams-based service learning. So they're working with a community partner organization doing team projects for them. And because of the team component, there's lots of ways to build in community and build in opportunities for engagement and interaction. I asked them to have weekly synchronous team meetings, even though it's an asynchronous online course. So they just find a time that'll work for everyone in the team. They're expected weekly to send me a team meeting update report so that they're held accountable and I'm up to speed on where they're at in their projects. And we have a couple times a semester where they have set times where they meet with me as a professor in a synchronous setting. And then I'm available through office hours at other times, for them to get in contact with me. So there's just, the idea is touch points, right? Having lots of different touch points, not just between them and me as the instructor, but with them and each other and with their other classmates. So just think creatively about it, and there's lots of fun ways to do it. And I've found, actually, so this weekend I flew back to Missouri. That's where my parents live. It's their 50th wedding anniversary. So we've been having a grand celebration, and I've had lots of nieces and nephews that are here, many of which are college age. And so I had many of these discussions over the course of the last several days about how they're really frustrated about the COVID situation and about courses being online, and about how frustrated they are with the crappy online classes that they've been having that they had last spring, and how nervous they are about the fall. Some of them debating should they just wait it out and not go to school for a year and then come back. All those types of discussions that you're probably having on your campuses. And the truth is, there are really crappy online courses. But the truth is, there's also some really awesome online courses. You can design an online course to be really engaging, that will really challenge and stretch the students. But it starts with the basics. It starts with the scaffolding that we've been talking about, the structure. It requires open and regular communication between the faculty and the students. It requires timely feedback. I mean, none of this is like new. These are the types of things we always talk about in teaching a good course. It's just more important in an online environment where you don't have that face-to-face component, that you make sure that you do all those things. And the same thing applies to online service learning. It's probably even more important in online service learning that you have those touch points. And then the students can have awesome experiences. I love hearing, I was just reading before our live session today, I had students that submitted kind of mid-semester reflections for their online service learning project that they're doing in my organizational development class. And it's so much fun to hear about the experiences they're having, some of the challenges that they're having, but also the things that they're learning, how they're being stretched, and they really like it. They've gotten a lot out of it, and that's rewarding as a professor to see that. So yeah, don't be scared of doing this in an online environment, as long as we're thoughtful and have some preparation and are committed to trying to connect with the students. I think it'll work itself out. The biggest challenge comes when faculty are kind of AWOL in their online course and slow to be responsive to students. Students then go AWOL, and then you basically have a completely disengaged and disconnected faculty-student relationship, and that's a recipe for disaster. So, especially doing service learning. So those are my thoughts. Anyone have anything in relation to that you want to bounce ideas off of, or are we ready to move on? Okay, well, it looks like we are ready to move on. I want to share my screen for this next discussion. We're going to be talking about student competencies. So let me do that real quick. And in order to, there's lots of really good resources in Google Classroom for the competencies, things for you to consider and keep in mind. But I do want to just share with you an assessment that I use with my community partners at the end of the semester. I use a variety of assessments, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit in our next session too on Wednesday. But this is one. At the end of the semester, the community partners know that they will be responsible for providing feedback on the student team projects, and they know that they will need to be evaluating their students. They evaluate them on these characteristics, and there's some other questions, and I can share this with you later. And each of these I included because they're really important professional competencies within my discipline. You could easily add other competencies to a similar type of an assessment, that fits directly with your course and directly with your discipline. But for me, these are the ones that I really wanted to key in on and focus in on. The students know that at the end of the semester, I will evaluate their projects and their contribution to the organization, but they also know that their grade is partly dependent on doing a really great job for the organization, and that they'll be evaluating the students. And so that means every touch point with the organization needs to be professional. From the very first contact, through the needs assessment, through all of the follow-up emails and phone calls and meeting with employees at the organizations, all that kind of stuff. They are representing not just themselves, but their team, me, the university, and a big part of all of this experience that I'm having them go through is so that they can develop their professional competencies. So they're, what I would say is shovel-ready students. Once they graduate, they're ready to hit the ground running because they've already done a handful of these types of consulting projects that they can demonstrate to employers as giving them the skills, the competencies, the capabilities to be able to just go out and start immediately to make a meaningful impact in organizations. So that's anyways why I designed that the way I did here and how I use it. I'm really curious. It's me sharing this is less about this specific document. I don't want you to feel like this is the type of thing you need to use yourself, but just an idea and some of the types of competencies that employers say they want and they need. Consistently, we hear from businesses in our community that they need people with better interpersonal skills, better teamwork skills, more emotional maturity and emotional intelligence. They need people who are better communicators, both written and verbally. They need people that are more self-motivated. They need people with project planning experience, so on and so forth, right? And so that's all the things that we see here. And I'm super curious to hear about what type of competencies and capabilities you feel are most important for your classes and how you could see yourself going about designing experiences that would help students to develop those. So that's what we're going to do in our next breakout. Let me, before we break out though, any questions? I need to stop sharing. Any questions about kind of the general idea of professional competencies and helping students to develop those?
The only thing I wanted to share was
yes,
that
please.
I feel like I've had to let people know this off the bat. Never feel like you have to create your own assessment tools. There are more than enough tools out there that can be utilized. If I can share material from, I have a lot of hard copy things from my days when I had attended an ETS workshop that I've continued to hold on to and I've utilized because it was specifically focusing on their civic competency focused assessment tools. And then they have a really good research tool. If I can find the PDF of it, I'd love to share it with you all because it has the breakdown of all different types of civic engagement, civic responsibility components that are really of our benefit, that have really great different ways of focusing on getting this information to collect. I've always been an interest in making sure that if this is something you're planning on doing and you have really accessible IRB abilities with your campus, this is great scholarship work for yourself as well. Something to be cognizant of, maybe not during a pandemic, but something to think about in the future as well. And then I am not an assessment guru in any way, shape, or form, but I have written on a big board in my office that always emphasizes what would Kristen Norris do. And Kristen Norris is a colleague of mine at IUPUI, who I say she is setting the standard on what I should be doing as a civic engagement professional and service learning professional. And the kind of work that is coming out of Circle and IUPUI, I think are great tools that I think I'm going to be able to share with you all. So I'm going to stop there so that we can have our breakout.
Yeah, and just to second Daniel's endorsement of IUPUI and Kristen and all of the work that they're doing, they're amazing. If you ever have a chance to do workshops with them around community engagement assessment, it's well worth your time. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to break you back into your groups. The main questions that you can address for about 10 minutes: what kind of professional competencies do you want to help your students to develop? And how will you build that into your service learning experience in your course? Okay, and we'll see you back in about 10 minutes. Okay.
I love that. And do you mind sharing that little example that you offered, John, for your class? That little Likert scale tool?
Oh yeah, so it's I sent those documents last week, 2 weeks ago when they were looking for assessment.
I'll backtrack. Okay.
But I can certainly resend it.
I want to find, so I have a hard copy of something that I got from ETS that I've always referred to. This is like my go-to. And it's when they were doing we were one of the pilots for one of the ETS scales of civic competency. And I've always just then kept on replicating that, but I ended up working with some junior faculty members who were able to utilize it for their scholarship work. And we then had some funding at that time from, I don't know if it was ASCU or it was AAC and U with bringing theory to practice. But I was just like, there's such a great way to make the connection. And I think if you're really smart about it earlier on, right, and being able to utilize tools that are going to be of your benefit, I think it's, if someone's willing and interested in going in that depth, I think if you're participating in this kind of a workshop, you're really conscious on what can you take your syllabus and your classwork to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being conscious of time, do you feel like we'll be able to do a third breakout session?
I think it depends on much time you feel like you need to take for ensuring equity in online settings.
Isn't that the funny thing? We're not giving as much time to equity as we should.
I know. I think I will be pretty quick. I'll try to be very quick on student self-directed learning and motivation to give you kind of the remainder of that time. So if you want to, I think we can. I think we can take 10 minutes for a breakout. We really need to.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the last question that the last prompt, the stakeholder engagement regarding social identities, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And I think Megan's she posted something earlier today that really touches on some of that. So hopefully some of them have already started to think about it if they haven't even posted anything.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Just a quick little note. I am still having difficulty in the last section, and I know we need to do some prep work for that. And I'm going to dedicate time to it. I don't know if the both of you have looked at that, and I'm just being really conscious that I know that was a section that we were still missing some areas. Katrina?
Yeah, we are.
Can't hear you. Can you speak up or? I heard you're clicking, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
my spouse is a therapist, and it has sessions running with the machine on next to me. Okay, so I know that Sally, you're talking about like the cleaning up the units and getting them.
Right.
So I know that I sent a couple of things to Megan, and Sally was going to look at them.
Okay.
They should do them soon. I was concerned. There's so much work that the folks are doing that I shared with Megan that, maybe not putting in too much work on that last unit is important so that, people can focus on the blueprint, like what we talked about on Friday. So I sent some stuff to her, just some wrapping up how to honor your work, how to celebrate it. But I don't know when she'll post stuff. I can send her an email right now and
I know that there's some posts like scheduled to go out. I haven't reviewed them to see if they are specifically relevant to this, but I know that
Unit 5 is mostly on, sharing your work, reflecting on your work, a lot of, it's mostly reflecting, I would say. So it's not like necessarily heavy assessment. I feel like I've scoured the web, looking for all kinds of, assessment. And I'm really hoping that from these classes, faculty can make some videos of stuff that they've come up with, and so that we can post it so we can use our own, the outcomes of this class to, help other folks who want to be creative. But I was struggling to find videos on faculty, let's say, talking about cool projects that they've done. If they are out there, I couldn't find them easily. Right. So I put together this really brief sheet on just like how to share your work on social media, sending it to community-based, directors at your school, institution, letting Campus Compact know what you've done. Maybe there's like a page where people can share. So is that what you were asking about? Like what exactly we're covering and what we're in Unit 5?
Yeah, no. You're helping me kind of conceptualize this right now, because I'm noticing if I look at our curriculum map, the next live session is really Unit 4.
Yeah.
It's 4 and 5 compressed. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like they're just based on some of the conversations. And I guess, I don't know, John, have you started thinking about this in regards to how your your intensive next week is going to be?
Yeah, we're having 3 sessions.
You are good.
Yeah, and we're really going to have the first session be module 1, and then the second session will be trying to do a condensed 2 and 3, and then 2 and 3, and then 4 and 5 on the last one. I think for us on Wednesday, I think we primarily can focus on Unit 4, on assessment and reflection, and then save a little bit of time towards the end for breakouts where they can just start to share, even though they're not done yet with their blueprint, but they can start to share what they're thinking and what they want to try to do. And then they'll be doing the videos and stuff at the end.
I guess. So there's a project management section for Unit 4. And the assessment I get, and I think we're already touching on that right now a little bit, the reflection and celebration and course reflections and lessons learned, right? I think that's what you're highlighting. I guess the project management is the one thing that I'm like, hasn't that been what we've been discussing throughout this whole experience?
Yeah, it is. So I don't think we need to.
I'll take that out then.
Yeah, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that.
Sure. I'm working on the outline. That's why.
Oh, okay.
So it helps me in regards to making sure that there are some prompted questions as well for breakouts and all that fun stuff.
Cool. All right, I just clicked on ending the breakouts.
Okay.
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. I think we have everyone back. For sake of time, because we want to make sure we give enough time to the equity piece, we won't do a quick share on that one. But I hope that was useful for you as you're having those breakout discussions. I just want to take a few minutes now and talk about student motivation. And then I'll hand it back over to Daniel and he'll take the equity piece. And we want to make sure you have some time to discuss that together as well. Really, the self-directed learning and motivation piece, I think is fairly straightforward. We need to recognize that students have different styles, preferred styles. And, if we're trying to play to their strengths, we want to leverage their comfort, but we also recognize that education is also about stretching and sometimes being put in a position of discomfort a little bit so you can grow. So we have to look for that balance, and we also need to recognize that there's kind of a myth behind learning styles, right? People do have preferred styles, but it's not accurate that like everyone has the one style that works for them. People are much more complicated than that. And so people have multiple types of styles that they can often work well with. And so in my experience, when I try to acknowledge and design experiences, assessments, learning opportunities and activities, I just try to take into account the various styles, being aware of them. When I'm forming teams, I try to keep in mind the strengths of the various team members so I can put them in complementary types of settings, and ultimately then hopefully give them the support so they can find success in the learning activities that I'm having them do. So I think being flexible and being willing to be adaptive to the student needs, and then just being available as a faculty member is really the key here when we're talking about student learning motivation. The reality is some students really struggle in an asynchronous online course. They struggle with self-motivation, they struggle with showing up and doing what they need to do on a consistent basis if you don't build in the scaffolding. Again, I was talking with some nieces and nephews just this weekend, and they said the online courses where they had like weekly modules, where they had stuff due, where they had weekly check-ins, those sorts of things, they did just fine. The other courses where basically they were kind of left on their own, and the professor said, you need to do all these things by the end of the semester, just make sure you do it. You're an adult, you can figure it out. You know, they didn't do so hot in those courses, and they didn't feel like they got much out of them. Frankly, I think most students would fall into that camp in an asynchronous online course. So there's definitely more we can do in terms of touch points and making sure that we're giving them a chance to tap into their motivation. And in a strictly online environment, students can start to feel it snowball, and they can start to feel overwhelmed very quickly if they start to get behind. And so we want to make sure that if we see a student starting to slip and get behind, that we proactively reach out to them, we acknowledge and help them understand that we see that they're struggling, we want to help them, see what we can do to help, those sorts of things, and even create, you know, some sort of a course completion plan with them so they can have it more clear in their mind what they need to do to be successful, to get through the course experience. I think all of that can be very helpful. And none of what I just said is unique to online service learning. It's just some general principles and practices in any online course. I think it's particularly relevant, though, in online service learning because they're doing this high engagement community type experience, and they just need support. They need scaffolding, and most students, especially underclassmen, undergrad students, you know, they won't be able to be successful unless we really build in the scaffolding. So I think I can leave it there, and I hand the baton back to you, Daniel.
And I apologize if you hear a howling or a barking going on in the background. My dog is having some anxiety problems, like all of us are. And I think I want to take what John was just emphasizing, because I think that that's a great segue into this conversation of equity and how are we giving our space to all of our students when we think about how we're engaging on class time, be it asynchronous or synchronous. But I don't expect everyone to be an expert in knowing how to be conscious of social identity development. But I think those are the key concepts when we need to be able to, when we introduce this community into our classroom and when we build our classroom community, are we really being conscious of all the variety of different social identities that each of our students are carrying with them, and making sure that we are creating as much as possible a universal design setup, to making sure that it's accessible from the get-go, and making sure that our assignments and our activities are meeting their needs where they're coming from. And I think thinking about where you identify your own identities, making sure that you're also being conscious of, I'll use the term the rear view, those different backgrounds and perspectives that maybe we aren't thinking about. And so really putting ourselves at a challenging place at times is trying to figure out how do we engage those conversations to the best of our ability, and making sure that we're creating a safe space in our classrooms with that being at the forefront. I think at times when I've had conversations with faculty members in either sociology or humanities or anthropology, or even some of my health science faculty members, they were able to pick up on it. And I felt at times, you know, there was this stigma or assumption with some faculty members in specific fields. That was not a conversation that was easily to come in to their narrative. And I think it's being really conscious of it from the get-go that's really important. And I think it's something that I really hope that you all can spend some time in our last breakout session really being able to highlight and to think about, what are you doing to be aware of all of the different types of social identities that our students are bringing to us. I know Megan has actually just posted something earlier this afternoon really starting to address this conversation in this piece. And I have a variety of resources, and I strongly am a big believer of all the resources that come out of UMass Amherst in the social justice education program. That's right, Joseph. Let me tell you, I don't even think the building exists anymore that I went to school in, because I think that was torn down and now is a new school of architecture, I think, or a new architecture school. But I think these are the conversations and resources that I've utilized for a lot of my diversity 101 classes or resources that are accessible online. And so I'll be sharing that on the larger feed, but why don't we put them out into breakout sessions, John, and we'll come back and then we'll be able to do a quick closing so that we can end our today's session appropriately. Does that sound good?
Yep, I'm gonna just post the question here real quick, and then I'll throw you back into breakouts and then put the questions there again as well.
Good job. You were able to get all of it in there. Can I just ask, did you hear the barking and the howling, or is it just me that was hearing it?
Yeah, we did. But that's all right. It makes me miss my dogs. My dogs are back home while I'm away.
Listen, so we ended up losing one of our dogs during this whole experience, and
I'm sorry.
It was a blessing in disguise, because we spent, an additional 6 weeks of uninterrupted attention with her, right? She was 15. So we had just recently celebrated her quinceañera, so that was good. She had our last Easter with us. But then my other one, he is having a lot more separation anxiety, and it's really difficult because both my husband and I, he's a faculty member and I'm working from home as well as an administrator. So he only sees us all the time. So if my husband, like he did, left for a quick walk, he starts barking the moment he leaves. Just like, come on. So John, do you not have, your dogs aren't with you because you're out with your family in Missouri?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm actually not with my family. They stayed behind. I already had COVID, so I felt okay traveling. But I didn't want to to potentially get them exposed. So I flew out to be with my parents, but my wife and kids are back with the dogs back in Utah.
Okay. Katrina, do you also have dogs?
I don't. I was just thinking about my poor cat that looks like she's sort of dying under the couch, but no, not at all. I find it cute when I hear dogs or kids in the background, because it makes us human, right? It just points out our humanity.
Let's be honest about it. The last time I had a meeting with my provost, he sat right on my lap, and I'm like, I can't get him. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to deal with the 13-year-old dachshund who is as stubborn as can be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good time. Again, I'll be sharing those resources regarding the equity pieces, but I think we really hit this appropriately and given them enough resources. And I think, John, other than having them either give us any perspectives, I think just a reminder about our office hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Katrina, is there anything that you have as a reminder for us to be conscious of?
No, I just wanted to ask you, would you like me to explore with Sally and Megan, like about the people who aren't on the call, like kind of what we should do, or I'll just see what they say about it. And okay.
Yeah.
And then if there's anything that, you need me to follow up on, just shoot me an email, or I have like a list of things, but in case I miss anything, feel free to just send it to me. So.
Oh, definitely. I think we're doing really good, honestly, and I'm not trying to give ourselves high praises. I mean, obviously there have been a little bit here and there, but I've been watching some of my colleagues who have been in classes online, and they're just having 4-hour lectures for a week. And so this breaking things up and having the technical support is really the way to go. And I'm a big fan. I don't know if either of you saw, but I posted some resources from Marshall Gantz at Harvard, and how he does his online community-based learning is just fantastic. And if I had the resources to have multiple TAs and multiple ways, that's how I would go about teaching a course like this. But I think this is a good model to then be able to replicate. So
yeah, I hope they're seeing I hope just their experience here is giving them an idea of how they might do this differently than what they'd previously considered. And in terms of those people who dropped off,
that's it.
It's just so hard because it's summer and it's pandemic and everyone's busy and trying to get stuff ready for fall. And so, part of it's just the way it is, I think. I mean, that's a horrible attrition rate from last Wednesday to today, but I'm not quite sure what we would do about that.
Right.
And because of the high number of people enrolled who are getting it for free,
Right.
That plays into that.
There's something about having skin in the game.
Yeah. I did have somebody reach out to me saying, "Oh, can I join?" And so I forwarded her to Marisol, and she's enrolling her into session 3. So it's
I
there are people interested,
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people who just have good intentions.
Yeah.
And then they just get overwhelmed. Like they think, oh, I can just slip this in. And it's not necessarily something you're just going to slip in.
No.
So. And the only way around that is if you vet people more up front.
Right.
So.
So we'll have 3 minutes. We might go over just a few minutes, if maybe 2 minutes. We don't have to do, popcorn unless anyone wants to share anything that they've gathered from today's session. But I think just the reminders will be more than enough.
Yeah.
I have to hop off here, but I'll see you Wednesday. Okay.
Bye now, Katrina. Thanks so much for everything.
Bye, Katrina. All right, everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully that 8 or 9 minutes was a good discussion. Would anyone like to share anything about what you discussed in your groups before we wrap up today?
You can go ahead.
Okay, well, I was volunteered. We talked about, of course, I'm remembering what I said, but one of the things was, Daniel in particular, we use at my university a lot of activities that were developed through the social justice education program, and I was just questioning and putting out there for the group how to use those activities, which ones are more or less appropriate, and how to revise them to use them remotely. It's challenging enough to do it in person, to do those activities. So that was one question. We talked about safe space versus, as a colleague of mine says, brave space. So acknowledging that you can never create a safe space for everyone. I mean, that's our society, but how do we engage each other and think about the effects of what we have to say on others and still not let it silence us, right? Because we're afraid to say something wrong. And what else? Can somebody else help me? What else did we talk about? I guess just the challenge of talking about these difficult subjects, which are really, really important, online. I just have never done that before, in a remote context. So what makes it different? How do we do it, as well as we can, given we're not in a room together? Yeah.
So underlying what Ellen is saying, though, is naming it, right? So I think I teach psychology, and I teach in particular social and counseling. And so those threads are throughout my areas of specialty. But my colleagues, I have a colleague who teaches cognitive, who every time she says, yeah, it's cognitive. It's just like, I just kind of want to, whatever. Like, so naming it, that this is a topic, social, it's present, whether, so let's acknowledge it, then we can do something with it.
And I really think, the best way to do that, and has always just been modeling to the best of my ability. So utilizing my pronouns right from the beginning, continuing to go towards that, being able to discuss. I'm a very open person, but that's my personality. And that's how I then end up going about sharing about my sexual identity or my Catholicism, or, where being a child of an immigrant, like that then gives the opportunity to open things up for that student, right? But not every instructor might feel flexible and comfortable to being able to share that. But I think it's really important for us to make sure that we're really thinking about that to the best of our ability, because I think that's what makes it able to be engaging. I think Ellen really pointed out something that's really important. It's hard to have this conversation in general for many. Mm-hmm. It's harder to have this conversation online, right? And I think I personally have been challenged with having these Zoom conversations with folks at church on trying to talk about white privilege with many elder population, and talking about how, as white Catholics, how can we work towards ending racism? And that's really difficult to do with a population that technology may not be their forefront. I'm not saying not everyone based on age, because I'm very conscious of that as well, but I'm also just saying it's difficult for a variety of folks. And I think we just need to be conscious that we're going to make mistakes, and we have to be okay with the humility that comes with that. And I think that's really important in a online pandemic world that we live in. So others, I know we're a little over, but I want to make sure we give the equity a little bit of space for our conversation. Okay. Jim, I do want to acknowledge that you indicated that you found the question confusing. Was there one question that you found confusing, or was there?
We were wondering what you meant by what kind of stakeholder engagement you prepare.
Sure.
Who
are the stakeholders?
Yeah, who were you referring to? Whom were you referring to?
Students, the community partners. I was trying to be really generic in that term. Maybe that was a little bit too, and I mean this with love, John, maybe it was a little bit too school of business to use stakeholder, but participant, I think would be the way that I would end up going about that. I'm also thinking of Cotter and stakeholder engagement, so that's probably where my mind went.
So having these conversations with the community partners as well. Okay, that's where I was.
Yeah,
that's what I was wondering. Yep.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that is really important, because if you're able to model that as well with your partners, it's really going to be able to open the conversations when our students are writing reflection papers that are going in deep. And maybe it's being conscious of the language that our students are going to be utilizing to then translate that back to the community, right? An academic piece might not fit necessarily the needs of the community partner. And it's making sure that you're able to engage that conversation ahead of time, and your prep is really going to be of importance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. So we recognize that we're a little over. John, is there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, really thank you everyone for your participation today, and for sharing. As we wrap up today, obviously there's way more we could dive into these topics. So hopefully you'll find the resources in the modules to be helpful. Please reach out if you have questions. And in terms of office hours, I have office hours tomorrow. Let me double check the time, make sure I tell you correctly. From 2 to 3 p.m. I'll have mine. Daniel, you want to share yours real quick?
Sure. So tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be doing my office hours. So I'll send that Zoom again for any.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, mine will be 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will also resend the link out tomorrow and put it in the stream in the Google Classroom. So please feel free to reach out to us. And otherwise, we'll see you on Wednesday for our last live meeting, where we'll be talking about assessment and reflection and reporting back on the ideas that you're having for your courses. So please be prepared. In one of our breakouts, we'll give you a chance to at least very high level share what you're thinking about doing for your online service learning.
Great. All right, friends, take care of yourselves. All right, and we'll be in touch. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.